Chapter 10 of Nicholas, a Manhattan Christmas Story by Carroll Moore. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. A Christmas Sail to Richmond. When Nicholas opened his eyes on Christmas morning, the troll called down from the Christmas tree,
"Skål, Nicholas! Take a look at your stockings."
Nicholas jumped up and ran over to the fireplace. 2 little red stockings, stuffed with presents, were hanging there. With one in each hand, he sprang back into bed again and pulled out, first of all, a pair of Indian moccasins of soft brown leather. Nicholas put on the moccasins. Next came a pair of skates, which were just a fit, a new kind of top, another little red leather book, a large drawing book, lots of blue and yellow pencils, a pencil sharpener, a knife with 2 blades, a watch, a set of fishing tackle, a baseball, a football, and a spyglass. Down in the heel of each stocking he found a red apple with nuts all round it, and in the toe of one was a shiny dime and a nickel, in the toe of the other a bright copper penny, and a Peter Rabbit just big enough to fit under his thumb.
"It's a luck charm,"
cried Nicholas.
"This Peter Rabbit will bring me luck, old giant."
"The night before Christmas country is a good place to wake up in Christmas morning,"
called the troll.
"I'm coming down."
And the troll gave a leap from the Christmas tree and landed right in the midst of all the presents. Just then the door of the Christmas room opened, and in came Joe Starr, carrying an electric grill with tiny sausages sizzling on it.
"Joyeux Noël, Nicholas! You and the old man must be about ready for breakfast. Here's our Dutch oven. Let's find that hamper."
Nicholas hopped up to give Joe Starr a hand with the hamper. They dragged it over to the window where the wishing table stood with the coffee bubbling up from one glass globe into another, and they were diving down under the sign when Anne Carraway walked in with a pot of white heather.
"Merry Christmas, everybody,"
she called.
"I've had the most wonderful dream. If it comes true, I'll tell you what it was all about. I found this white heather growing outside my door. It's sure to bring luck, Nicholas."
"See my luck charm, Anne Carraway,"
cried Nicholas, holding up his Peter Rabbit.
"and all these lovely presents."
Anne Carraway stopped to admire the presents, and then, emptying the jar of cream into a bowl of porridge for the troll, she set it under the Christmas tree. When she came back to the wishing table, Nicholas and Joe Starr were opening the packages beside their plates.
"Your turn first, Joe Starr,"
said Nicholas.
"I've had lots of presents in my stockings already."
So Joe Starr untied the sailor's knot of rope with which the odd-shaped parcel was tied, and there stood a small chest with curious markings on it. Raising the cover, he took from it 2 blue cups and saucers, 2 plates, a bowl, and a platter with Chinese pictures all over them. In the bottom of the chest he found some old silver forks and teaspoons, marked with an S and a B, and a card on which was printed,
"Joe Starr's traveling Christmas chest, warranted strong enough to preserve the owner from homesickness on land or sea, and deep enough to hold as many doubloons and pieces of eight as he can carry."
"That's a fine present, Joe Starr,"
exclaimed Nicholas.
"It can't be beat, Nicholas, old boy. Now let's see what you have yourself."
Nicholas untied a square package and opened a box, only to find another box, and another, and another, until he had opened 10 boxes. In the last one of all he found an electric flashlight, and underneath it, on a card addressed to Nicholas Knickerbocker, he read,
"I'm charged with the light of liberty. I flash on land and I flash on sea. So take me, dear Nicholas, wherever you roam, and you'll always find welcome and a feeling of home."
We can go anywhere with your traveling chest and my flashlight, can't we, Joestar?
exclaimed Nicholas.
We surely can, Nicholas, old boy. I'll get into my knickerbockers and take my field glasses, and we'll start right off for a Christmas sail as soon as the postman comes.
There's the postman's whistle now,
cried Anne Carraway, and downstairs she rushed, followed by the two boys, to wish the postman Merry Christmas.
It's a fine morning for a sleigh ride round Central Park,
suggested the postman as he filled their hands with letters and packages.
The old sleigh is out, I hear, and everybody who got a sled for Christmas is having a slide.
The best Christmas fun of all,
exclaimed Anne Carraway.
We'll go for a sleigh ride first and a sail afterward and pretend we're back in Maine, Joe.
But Joestar had vanished in pursuit of his knickerbockers and field glasses.
Aren't you coming, old giant?
asked Nicholas.
Not today, I'm too sleepy.
Replied the troll.
I'll guard the packages and letters. There may be gold inside.
Your spyglasses are like Admiral Farragut's, Joestar,
said Nicholas.
But what's the use of them on a sleigh ride?
No use at all, Nicholas, old boy. But I always take them when I go on the water, for I want to know what the captain thinks before he thinks it.
I believe I'll take mine along, too.
Said Nicholas.
And I'd like to take my skates. Is there any ice in Central Park, Anne Carraway?
Lakes of it, Nicholas. Take your skates by all means. We'll leave a branch of pine and a sprig of white heather as we pass Kate Douglas Wiggins' door. She lives close to Central Park in winter, and in summer she lives by the Saco River in Maine.
The old sleigh with its jingling bells and buffalo robes was waiting at the 59th Street entrance to Central Park. Anne Carraway and Joestar climbed into the back seat and buried their feet in the straw which covered the sleigh bottom. Nicholas jumped up beside the driver on the front seat. Off started the old red horse at a lively trot, and the driver, seeing that Nicholas was a stranger, gave him a longer ride than usual, stopped to speak to the mounted policeman, and again at the sheepfold to see Peggy, a dog he knew very well. Hundreds of boys and girls in gay new caps and mittens and sweaters were coasting and skating all over the park. Nicholas had never seen a flexible flyer before, and he was eager for a slide. But Joestar said,
Better wait and have your first slide with Ben in Maine.
The old sleigh left them near the sailboat lake, and while Nicholas was trying on his new skates, Joestar made lots of snowballs, and they had a grand fight before they left the park. On the way down to Staten Island Ferry, they stopped at the oyster bar in the Grand Central Station, where they all sat on high stools and watched the cooks in white suits inviting oysters of all sizes to come out of their shells and be cooked in little silver dishes, holding just enough for one person at a time.
Oysters, or clams, plain, half-cream, or pan-roast,
said one of the cooks to Nicholas, speaking very fast.
Pan roast,
said Nicholas without a moment's hesitation.
It sounds good, and I'd like to see how it's done. This is one of the jolliest places I've ever seen, Anne Carraway.
They're roasting and broiling and stewing just the way the Knickerbockers did when they came to Manhattan with Olaf, Nicholas,
said Joestar.
They've been doing it right along for 300 years.
The big station was filled with Christmas travelers bringing holly wreaths from the south and fragrant balsam boughs from the Adirondack Mountains, and the redcaps were hurrying back and forth with bags, suitcases, golf sticks, snowshoes, and skates.
It's more like a cathedral than a railway station,
said Nicholas.
I love that blue sky over the platform, Anne Carraway. It looks like the real sky with Orion and the Milky Way and all the gold stars twinkling up there.
The Grand Central is beautiful any day,
said Anne Carraway.
but I wouldn't miss seeing it at Christmas time for anything in the world. There's an art gallery upstairs, Nicholas, and long streets of little shops, each side of the ticket offices, where you can buy anything you've forgotten on your way to the train. Some day we'll come exploring, but we must go for our sail now, while the sun is still high.
Down the harbor on that lovely Christmas afternoon sailed the Staten Island ferry boat with Nicholas, Joe Starr, and Anne Carroway on the upper deck all by themselves. The water was as blue as the sky, and the gulls were flying over their heads. With their spy-glasses, Nicholas and Joe Starr saw everything there is to see in New York Harbor.
Staten Island is bigger than Manhattan, Nicholas, old boy,
said Joe Starr.
There's a marvelous view from those heights. Someday we'll climb up there. But I'm all for the ship today.
Tell me about the Arizona, Joe Starr. What did you do on that ship?
Joe was looking straight out to sea through his spy-glasses, and not until the ferry boat had made her Staten Island pier and was putting back across the bay did he make any reply. Then he put up his spy-glasses and said,
Come along up in the bow, Nicholas, and I'll tell you about one time when I was upriver on the Arizona with an old sea dog, and we took the ship to the Navy Yard. Down the river we went at half tide, with the captain nearly crazy because the pilot was in command, but the old man was still responsible for his ship. The river was chock-a-block with all manner of tugs and smacks and ferries. They kept me busy at the whistle. I was a sort of whistle boy, the junior officer of the deck. We played checkers with the other ships all the way down the river, and rounded the battery in style. And then, Nicholas, the battle began. The old pilot pulled out a whistle, and a whole flock of little tugs came alongside and buried their noses to her sides, like puffing bullpups. They shunted us into the Navy Yard to the tune of the pilot's whistle, and when her prow crossed the line of the dock, the captain sighed his relief, because then his ship belonged to the captain of the yard. And I tell you, Nicholas, that being whistle boy was a hard job,
said Joe with a twinkle in his eye.
That's a good story, Joe Starr,
said Nicholas.
I could see the Arizona coming straight down North River. Tell another. Did you ever see the Arizona, Anne Carroway?
Often,
replied Anne Carroway.
I once had 4th of July dinner with the whistle boy when she was in dry dock. We're having our Christmas dinner at the Lafayette, Nicholas, and Joe Starr must save the rest of his stories to tell us there. Let's watch for Liberty to light her torch.
And as Liberty flashed her signal, the lights appeared in one high tower after another, and ran twinkling across Brooklyn Bridge, turning ferry boats and trolley cars into big glowworms and fireflies. Then, as the harbor grew darker and darker, and more mysterious, suddenly a soft, radiant light sprang up from Liberty's feet, and the whole statue stood bathed in light from head to foot.
Does Liberty keep all that light for Christmas, Anne Carroway?
He asked.
No, she stands in it every night of the year,
replied Anne Carroway.
I come to see her often at lighting up time, and each time seems more wonderful than the last.
I wish John Moon was here,
said Nicholas.
We can see things from the ferry boat we couldn't see from Battery Park. Do you know John Moon, Joe Starr?
Yes, I know him very well, Nicholas, old boy. Come here, and I'll tell you something about him.
And arm in arm with Nicholas, Joe Starr leaned over the rail and said in a very low voice,
John Moon is coming to our dinner party at the Lafayette. Don't tell Anne Carroway. We want to surprise her.
Nicholas nudged Joe Starr, and then he said, loud enough for Anne Carroway to hear,
Where's the Lafayette, Joe Starr? It isn't on my map.
behind the old Brevoort, near Washington Square.
replied Joe Starr.
They have the same cook, I believe. It's a festive place for a Christmas dinner. People come from all over the world. I think you'll like it, Nicholas. I do, and so does Anne Carraway.
The Lafayette looked very festive that night. There were holly wreaths in the many windows on both sides of the room, and a row of gay flower boxes ran up and down the middle. The room had a high part and a low part, with a flight of steps between. Joe Starr had engaged a table in the high part, next to the balcony rail.
I hope there's been no mistake,
he said to Anne Carraway.
but someone is already seated at our table.
Halfway across the room, Anne Carraway recognized John Moon.
See who's here, Nicholas,
she cried, and then she saw that Nicholas and Joe Starr were both laughing and signaling to John Moon, who was now standing and signaling back. The old French waiter seemed to be in on the secret too, for he was smiling and smiling as he stood behind Anne Carraway's chair. There was a bunch of purple and gold pansies at her plate, and a silver whistle for Nicholas.
How do you like my surprise party, chère tante?
Said Joe Starr.
You gave me one last night, remember?
I think it's the jolliest Christmas party in all of Manhattan,
said Anne Carraway. Soon every table was filled with gay Christmas guests from many lands, and they were talking and laughing in so many strange languages that Nicholas nearly forgot to eat his Christmas dinner.
They must be speaking in all languages, John Moon,
he said, as he sat watching the flashing jewels and gorgeous colors of the ladies' dresses.
Do these people come from all the countries in the world, Joe Starr?
Let's ask the waiter,
said Joe Starr.
He ought to know. He's been right here for 25 years.
So Joe Starr asked the waiter in French, and the waiter was very polite and didn't smile at his accent, and said that he had often counted guests from as many as 30 different countries at a Christmas dinner. With the coffee came gay French fans for all the ladies, and then John Moon and Joe Starr began to smoke and matched stories.
Joe Starr's adventures are equal to Sinbad's when he gets as far away as Constantinople,
said John Moon.
How did you happen to go to Constantinople, Joe Starr?
Asked Nicholas.
I sailed under sealed orders,
said Joe Starr.
That reminds me,
said John Moon.
Once upon a time, Nicholas. No, I'll save that one, for I've just time to catch the last train home. Good night, everybody. Whistle for me, Nicholas. Don't let me break up the party.
But by that time all the parties were breaking up and mingling with Christmas travelers from all over the world. Nicholas, Anne Carraway, and Joe Starr stepped out from the Lafayette into Christmas night.
The old troll must be wondering what's become of us,
said Anne Carraway.
Let's go home and light a fire before we go to bed.
I've had a good time every single minute of this day, Joe Starr,
said Nicholas.
I like my Liberty flashlight best of all. I'm going to take it to bed with me tonight.
End of Chapter 10.